Welcome, everyone, to the third annual Veterans and Restorative Justice event. My name is Dan Kelly, and I serve as Dean and Mengler Chair in Law here at the University of St. Thomas School of Law. I want to welcome everyone, both those participating in person here at the University of St. Thomas School of Law and those participating remotely from across the country. A special welcome to retired Major General Johanna Clybourne, Judge Susan Nelson, Ramsey County Attorney John Choi, Minnesota American Legion State Commander Carl Moon, several Minnesota state representatives, and a number of alumni, faculty, staff, and students of the University of St. Thomas. In addition, I want to welcome all of the founders and officers of the Veterans Defense Project, including the chair, Professor Hank Shea of the University of St. Thomas School of Law. Thank you for all of the work that you have done and continue to do through the Veterans Defense Project. I also want to give a very special welcome today to all of the veterans in the audience and online, as well as their family members. Please join me in thanking all of our veterans and their families for their service and their sacrifice. My father, Thomas Kelly, no relation to the famous Twins manager, proudly served in the U.S. Army as a member of the 1st Infantry Division, otherwise known as the Big Red One. Through my father, I learned early on several valuable lessons, including love of country, the importance of patriotism, and a deep gratitude to all those who have defended our country in the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedoms. After his service to our country, my dad went on to become a professor of both American history and European history, with a special love of military history. So growing up, I not only learned a lot about the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War I and World War II, among others, we also watched many classic war movies. From The Great Escape and The Bridge on the River Kwai, A Bridge Too Far, Patton, The Longest Day, Glory, and more recent films like Memphis Belle, Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan, and Lone Survivor. These films and the lessons I learned from my dad helped me to understand the importance of supporting all of our military personnel, all of our veterans, and especially those who need restorative justice. I also want to give special thanks to my college roommate, who is in the ROTC at the University of Notre Dame and served our country for 8 years, doing reconstructive surgery on military personnel coming back from wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. I'm proud to have been associated with 2 schools, my former school, the University of Notre Dame, and now the University of St. Thomas, who have long supported their ROTC programs, the U.S. military, and our veterans. And today, I'm very proud that the University of St. Thomas School of Law can host this 3rd annual Veterans and Restorative Justice event. We will always be grateful for our veterans and all that they have done for us and our country. And we are so grateful to the Veterans Defense Project for all the great work they do in supporting our veterans with mentors and restorative justice. Please join me in thanking all those involved with the Veterans Defense Project for their outstanding work. And now please stand for the presentation of the colors by the University of St. Thomas Air Force ROTC cadets, and please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by University of St. Thomas School of Law alum, class of 23, Anna Johnson. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Anders Folk. I'm a partner at the Jones Day Law Firm, and I'm a member of the Veterans Defense Project Board and our incoming board chair, and I'm just thrilled to be here this afternoon and thrilled to be here with all of you. I have the honor and pleasure this afternoon to introduce a University of St. Thomas law graduate, Major General Joanna P. Clybourne. I'm thrilled to introduce here today. She is many things. Founding partner of the law firm of Brecky, Clybourne and Ribich, and is a family lawyer and a lawyer who focuses on issues unique and particular to our armed forces members. She is a Minnesota super lawyer, a top 100 lawyer, a top 50 women lawyers, and the list goes on. She's also a National Guardsman with over 33 years of service, holding the rank of Major General. She served as Deputy Commanding General for the Cyber Center of Excellence at Fort Gordon. She's a combat veteran, having served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, where she received the Bronze Star. And she is the first female to command a brigade and obtain the rank of Brigadier General in the Minnesota Army National Guard. In short, she's a trailblazer. And last but certainly not least, as I mentioned, she's a graduate of the University of St. Thomas Law School. We're thrilled to have the General with us here today, and it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to introduce her to all of you here today on our third annual event. Thank you, Major General Clybourne.
Muhammad Ali once said that service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. This week, all across the country, in town halls, city squares, parades, and places just like this, we celebrate and honor Americans' veterans for their devotion, patriotism, selfless service, and sacrifice on behalf of us all. We join hands in the name of peace and freedom to pay those veterans a proper tribute, to say thank you, for it is their loyalty to their country and their own great courage that has made us what we are today, the world's indispensable nation, the land of the free, the home of the brave, a beacon of hope in an often troubled world. But that service to others, in the form of military service, that we celebrate, comes at a very high cost, both to the service member, their family, and the community around them. As a child of a Vietnam veteran, alcoholism, domestic violence, and PTSD was alive and well in my home. I swore I would never join the military or marry anyone in the military. I did both. I have seen the joys and the cost that military service can extract. I have worn many hats, that of a child of a combat veteran, that of a wife of a veteran, a military commander charged with imposing discipline within the ranks, a combat veteran myself, and as a lawyer. Yet it strikes me that in the presence of our annual patriotic fervor, it's all too easy to lose sight of the trauma that many of our service members have endured. The truth is, war is an ugly business, and the suffering endured in the service of our country does not end once the conflict is ended or they come home. It often continues to wreak havoc on the hearts and minds of many of our service members and their families. The cost of this service can be seen both in the invisible and visible injuries of war. The invisible burdens of anxiety, anger, fear, guilt, relief, grief, and heartache. It weighs heavily on many of our veterans and service members who endure the hidden traumas of that military service. About 20% of veterans experience depression or PTSD, and 38% have a diagnosed mental health disorder. However, the actual number is far higher, mostly because of unreporting or undiagnosis for fear of coming forward, or because of a lack of access to resources needed. The most common mental health challenges for veterans include post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, traumatic brain injury, depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. Our veterans are more likely to die by suicide than non-veterans. And fewer than half of veterans who need mental health treatment receive it. What we call concurring disorders is common, meaning it's where there is mental health issues and substance abuse disorder simultaneously present. So what happens if you don't have the proper care and the support system in place? What happens when you don't have the opportunity to talk through or think through what you have experienced? What happens to all the fear, the anger, the sadness, the betrayal, the guilt, and the grief? They do not just disappear. No, there are consequences to these injuries. Sometimes the symptoms take months to emerge. Sometimes years have passed and something triggers to surface them. These injuries are with you, and when they have not been healed, they continue to surface and affect your ability to function. It will impact you, your loved ones, and possibly the safety of those around you. So how do we as a society ensure the pathways of support and healing for our veterans and their families? Well, John Fitzgerald Kennedy once said, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest form of appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them, because all of us believe and understand in the fabric of the common bond of why we call ourselves American, and it's to care for the men and women who wear the uniform, and when they take off that uniform, we care for them when they are veterans." The Veterans Defense Project is where the rubber meets the road. If we truly wish to care for our veterans, we have to roll up our sleeves. We must continue to advance how we care for our veterans and their families. As a Veterans Court mentor myself for the last 9 years, I have seen firsthand the positive impact on our veterans who participate in a rehabilitative justice system focused on their unique needs. It is a collaborative process of addressing the root cause of what drove that veteran into the justice system. Often at the beginning of the process, many feel as if the light at the end of the tunnel is a train heading towards them. However, towards the end of the process, I suspect many now describe it as the light at the end of the tunnel is hope. It is strength. It is a healthy engagement and return into society. With the support of the Veterans Defense Project, the Veterans Restorative Justice Act passed in 2021, it ensures that all our veterans here in Minnesota have access to that justice system that will allow for that rehabilitative process all across the state, whether or not there's a veterans court available to you within your county. But the truth is it can't stop there. It has to be a program available to all of our service members nationwide. Your support of the Veterans Defense Project can help drive this change. We have to work better to educate our lawmakers. We have to look at the trends and create holistic systems that must be provided by diverse methods of delivery and access. We have to focus on continuing to reduce the stigma of seeking mental health help and making those resources readily available. We must ensure our legal system, such as the family law realm, which I practice in every day, does not use military service and any resulting mental health challenges as a sword to separate our families. We must continue to pull and drive the data to access, fund, and drive change of policies that better fit the unique circumstances and challenges that military service and being a military family brings. What can you do? You can support the Defense Project. I suspect you have that indication because you're here. If you're eligible, please consider becoming a Veterans Court mentor, or encourage others to volunteer within the process. Donate your time, your money, your resources, your talent, your support. The fact is that each of our veterans, along with their families, sacrificed to serve that pact, what we call sacred, between warrior and society, that all of us who have worn the uniform hold so dear, and we within our communities benefit from. That shared knowledge is the bond we live with, not only once a year during Veterans Day, but every day. That hallowed connection must remain throughout the year and throughout the rest of our lives. May we forever be bonded by our service and forever indebted to one another's service, in our hearts, in our words, and in our deeds. We must always be there for one another. Thank you.
My name is Ryan Else, and I'm a co-founder of the Veterans Defense Project and a graduate of St. Thomas Law School. As a practitioner who's in our veterans courts on at least a weekly basis, I'm really thrilled to have a conversation with the people in the trenches that make it work. Paul Evangelos is in the red shirt here, and he has been a mentor coordinator for the Anoka County Veterans Court since 2014. In this role, he's been responsible for recruiting, training, and managing the court's team of mentors. From my personal experience as an attorney that's practiced in that court, I can attest that It is among the best, and Paul is a very big reason that that court is such a success. He served in the United States Marine Corps, Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Division, in Vietnam in 1969 and 1970. During his tour, Paul made a promise that one day he would change the world by helping veterans instead of fighting a war. He then went on to a career in education before becoming a mentor coordinator in Anoka. Ryan Haugen, directly to my left, is a former mentor in the Ramsey County Veterans Treatment Court, where he applied the lessons of his own recovery experience to help guide other veterans through their rehabilitation. Before joining the mentor program, Ryan previously worked at the VA in the benefits administration area and for the Wounded Warrior Project. He's currently certified as a peer recovery specialist and is founder of the Silent Warrior Project, which is a nonprofit that hosts spiritual retreats that teach mindfulness, meditation, and contemplative prayer to veterans with PTSD and military sexual trauma. Ryan served on submarines in the United States Navy until 1996. Since leaving the military, Ryan has been fortunate enough to have married twice and had 3 children, 6, 8, and 23. Ryan, I'll start with you. How did you become a mentor in the Veterans Treatment Court?
Well, thanks for asking, and thanks for the invitation. And I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be on this stage. And, you know, there's a lot of veterans mentors out there that could be here. And so I'm humbled to share my experience. I found a flyer posted on a bulletin board in an AA meeting in St. Paul. And it just said, "Veterans help veterans." And that caught my eye. And then at the bottom, there was Don Lindstrom's name was on it, and his phone number. The same day, I gave him a call, and he asked me where I got the flyer, and I told him. And we arranged coffee, and he interviewed me a few times, and we got to know each other, and then he invited me on board to be a mentor at Ramsey County. A great experience, and he was a great veterans treatment coordinator. So that was how I came to be a mentor.
Thank you.
Yep.
Paul, how did you get started as the mentor coordinator in Anoka?
Well, I'm going to take you back a little ways to when I was in Vietnam. When I made that statement about saying I'm going to change the world by not fighting a war and then working with veterans, we had pretty intense combat experiences over there for several days in a row, and I just said to myself, this is not the way to do that. So when I made that statement, it was just like, I'm going to change the world by working with veterans. That was it, and then I went back and did my military stuff. I didn't realize that at that particular time, I think I became a mentor way back then when I was 20 years old. And what happened was that back in 2014, come real fast with me up to that date, 2014, in January, I was filing a claim with Laura Bartley, who was a VSO in Anoka County. And she talked to me about that Anoka County had a Veterans Treatment Court. And she said, we're looking for a peer mentor coordinator. And I said, okay, here's what I think I can do with that. And I went right down the list about doing this and doing that and finding mentors, and let's do some training. And how about let's figure out what the needs are of the veteran, and how do I understand the court and all that sort of thing. Well, she said, well, that sounds pretty good. And then I didn't hear anything from her for 6 months. And I thought, this is over, you know. But I still kind of held on to that. I'm going to change the world by helping veterans instead of fighting the wars. Well, she called I know what it was. It was June 13th of 2014, and said, the court wants to meet you. We still need a mentor coordinator. Well, can you come? And I said, sure. When? She said, tomorrow. I said, I'll be there. And so that was the first time I sat down with the court team. And within 1 hour, this is an amazing court, and amazing people that run that court. And I'm lucky to have been able to be part of that. And I want everybody to know that that court is the reason why we have mentors. But just to go on to what I was saying, within 1 hour of being with all those people at that court, I realized that this was the place that me helping veterans but to change the world was going to happen. And that's how it came about. It was really simple. I was just absolutely ecstatic about it, and the passion that I have about helping mentors has been coming true, and it is true for the last 10 years.
And Paul, what does the role as mentor coordinator entail? What are your responsibilities in the court?
It goes like this. Basically, the coordinator recruits, interviews, selects, trains, matches, monitors, and troubleshoots with veterans so that they can help, troubleshoots with mentors so that they can help a veteran change their life. That is their job, okay? Now, each one of those steps require quite a bit of activity in order to figure out what the needs are of the veteran and how would you match them. The interview process that I use is pretty extensive, usually has about 4 parts, so that I can get to know the possible potential mentor so that I can see that they can really possibly do this job. Okay, so all of those steps take time. Now, I don't do them all by myself. Sometimes I'll have court staff help me. Sometimes I work with the mentors to help me to make some decisions and see the kind of directions that need to be taken in order to meet the needs of the veteran first and then always the mentor first. I want both of them to be successful. Other tasks that I do is I meet with the court on court days. We have staffing, and then there's court on every two Fridays of each month, and so I'm there all the time. I provide information about how the mentor might be working with the veteran, just a brief kind of very general kind of conversation about that for each relationship that's out there. I also help the court find out other information about other organizations that are out there that can help veterans that are part of the court. So I help to get them introduced to the Vet Center, which is in Anoka County, help them get introduced to Magnus Veterans Association, which is a foundation, which is just about 6 miles outside of Anoka. And so there's a lot of organizations out there that we can send veterans to that can have their needs met in a different way. So it's a real active role, and that's okay with me.
Ryan, would you walk us through your work with mentees from the time they enter the court through graduation?
Well, each mentee is different, and I guess the way that I am a mentor is the way that I work in a recovery program. I've been doing that for 30 years and have been active or abstinent for 17, and they seem to work hand in hand really well. And there seems to be similar problems with our veterans in the court systems with substance use disorder and mental health issues that go hand in hand with recovery programs. And that's just in my experience, that's what I have to offer. That's my experience. And I think every mentor is different, and every mentor does things. You got a well-oiled machine. And so you might have your mentors doing the same thing. I don't know. And that would run well. I had some freedom. And I worked with each individual human being and kind of saw their needs as they expressed them. And we did work in a recovery format. And if the mentee wanted to work a recovery program, we did that. If they just wanted to go out for coffee, we would do that as well. But we would also talk about kind of recovery-based productive things. So in the back of my head, I always wanted to work towards healing moral injury. It was always there. There was post-traumatic stress and moral injury, and we were using substances to ease the pain, and using the substances to ease the pain resulted in the criminal activity. That's only my experience, and that it's like A, B, C, D, you're in jail. And I was in jail as well. I got a DWI because I was drinking to ease the pain of PTSD from military service. And so that was the experience that I shared that lit them up like a Christmas tree. And they're like, me too, you're not alone. I can relate. And then they would open up and be willing to work with me. that was the key, the point, and there's a question in there about the point at which, you could transform the recoveries, and they're willing, is they see that you understand. And that was just my approach. So I am not an organized military, I can't even manage a schedule. But, but I do love to connect to human beings and listen to them intently and see what they need. And not to ramble on, but that's what's been successful for me, because that's enabled me to then deliver, or kind of get ahead of kind of the needs of my mentee and really bond with them, and then deliver some resources, or say, hey, you were talking about this, try that. That's kind of my style, or that's how I worked with them along the path in phase 1 to 4. That's my experience.
And you hit on a point that I think is important for our audience to understand. Can you explain, most people are familiar with PTSD, but not the term moral injury. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm not an expert and I'm not a doctor, but Dr. Jonathan Shea, a VA doctor, coined the term. And it's basically when we are forced to do things that go against our morals and values, like in combat when we kill or are raped. I'm sorry to use the language, but that's a fact. It creates a moral injury. And anyone who suffers from it immediately understands the term. They've never heard it before, but they understand it. And that's what I've been suffering from. And that's what I drank to get over. But, so, I think I just described it. That's what I was suffering from for years, and I didn't understand what it was. But basically, when we violate our own values and morals, it creates a moral injury. And then there's some specific things that we can do to heal from that.
Is there a particular point in the veteran's journey through the program where you feel like there's a breakthrough, or is kind of the most important point for you as a mentor to work with them?
Absolutely, and I mentioned willingness. And usually there's like you playing volleyball or tennis with this human being. And a lot of times they're just not hitting the ball back. And that's when I stopped playing tennis. Just like in recovery, I'm only going to work, I'm going to meet you halfway. And if you stop playing tennis, I'm done playing tennis. I'm take my ball and go home. But I see the willingness when they start hitting the ball hard, and they start preparing and they clean the grass, and they're showing up early and they want it, and you can see it in their eyes and they're excited. And that's the transformation that happens, to go from an orange jumpsuit to normal clothes. And then, so the point is when I see willingness, my first sponsor told me the same thing. He said, finally I can work with you. I see the willingness, but you've been a pain in the ass up to this point. So, I kind of painted it, but that's how it is.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Paul, as you're recruiting mentors for your program, what do you look for in a good mentor?
There's so many things to look for. I'm looking for someone that can really relate to another individual, okay? Really understands about who they are and accepts them for who they are. And they're non-judgmental, they're empathetic, they're understanding, they're sensitive about the needs of that person that they're working with. Okay, it's critical. Okay, you start judging somebody, it's not going to work. Okay, the other one that's really hard, and you talked about it just when you said let's play tennis, and they're not hitting anything in the ball back. Okay, and what's happening there is, and this is something that's really critical, is that you have to accept the pace of the individual that you're working with. You can't be in front of them. Okay, it will not work if you're in front of them. Okay, so if they're not hitting the ball, don't even think about playing the game. You just got to go and match them. Okay. The other critical components are how well can they help another individual sort out chaotic and chaotic aspects of their life so that they can develop a new direction. Okay, how good of a problem solver are they? Okay, that's important. Okay, and can they coach somebody to help come up with new directions that belong to what their needs and meets their needs so that they can change their life. Okay, there's really no other higher level of service in my mind. When a mentor works with an individual, that's the highest level of service that I think somebody can give somebody else. Okay. Another piece of what I look for is how well do they listen? Well, you know, we always think about the voice being the major way of communicating. We've worked on this as mentors. Listening is the most important piece, I think, because when you're really truly listening to somebody, it means that you're really truly sitting right next to them and understanding how close they are and how hard it is for them to maybe share some information with you that is painful or scary. It might be trauma. It could be MST. It could be TBI. It could be anything. You just never know what's going to happen and what's going to come your way. And then I'm looking for somebody that, in some ways, their life at one time or another was the life of the veteran that they might be looking at and working with. In other words, their life was they were homeless, or they'd been in jail 15 times, or they're alcoholics, or they're people who had to learn how to do something different with their life, okay, because they didn't want to be stuck with where they were in the life that they already had. They didn't want that. They really know how to build. They really know what it takes to build, okay, and how long it takes to build and make changes. I've got one mentor that's been an alcoholic for 40 years, and he knows it, okay? Hasn't had a drink for 40, and he was homeless. Another one, 25 years, an alcoholic. Another one that had TBI, he's had issues that he's had to deal with. Others have been in and out of jail. And they don't have to be that, okay? They don't have to have that. Some of them have had pretty steady and consistent lives, but they're still so smart about all the other things that I'm mentioning. Now, the other things that on the surface, I'd look for MOS. I'd look to see if they're combat veterans, not necessary, but it's helpful. I look to see if they if they have honorable discharge. They have to have an honorable discharge. They have to be willing to do a background check, criminal background check, and they cannot be involved with any court for any reason if they're going to be a mentor. And if they get in trouble when they're a mentor, they're no longer a mentor. Okay, I'll start working with them to help them get help, but they're no longer going to be a mentor. So that's kind of the big picture that I look at, and I think that I've had really good success over the years. I've had mentors that stay a long time. I've had several that have been there 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I've had one right now, he's been there 9 years. Another one that's still with the program, he's been there 8 years. So, I mean, I'm looking for somebody that's willing to stick. They want to help. They're aggressive about being helped. You know, when you go through the interview process, what do I got to do? Here's the paperwork, fill it out. Next day I got the paperwork. When they come to a meeting, they're 10 minutes early. Those are the people that want to be mentors. And they know how to hustle, and they know how to work with other people. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's really fun to pick them out. There's a lot of amazing people out there.
And earlier you had mentioned staffing, where you come together with the judge and the prosecutor and defense attorney, probation agents, and others that are working to help the veteran through the program. Can you tell us about how you and your mentors work with the rest of the Veterans Court team?
Sure. So the court's here, and the mentors are here. Now that by design, and I've trained them. We've trained. I'm sorry, but we've trained so that we stay over here. That doesn't mean we can't interact. We can't go, and talk to each other or anything like that. It means that we want the veterans to know that we're involved with the court as mentors. But we don't talk to the court about what the veterans are telling the mentors. The confidentiality component is extremely important, okay? If that gets out, and I know courts where this has happened, where if somebody thinks that the court, a veteran, mentor's telling court people what's going on with the veteran, it's like a wildfire. The trust just drops totally, and it's really, really hard to get it back, if you can get it back at all. So the mentors are over here, the court's over here. When there's court, the mentor will stand with the veteran so that they can see the association. Mentors in Anoka always wear a shirt like this, which is really not a shirt, it's a symbol. So everybody knows that if you have the shirt on, you are a mentor, okay? And they have some idea about what you do and why you're standing up with a veteran in front of the court, okay? So they stand there. On occasion, the judge may ask the mentor to comment on how the veteran is doing. We've done coaching on that also. This is be careful about what you say. Do not break confidentiality. And we work hard on that because that's just, you just can't have it happen. Okay. The other thing that mentors have been trained to doing is that sometimes they might not agree with what the court does. They have a relationship with the veteran's important to them. They might not like what the court does, but they do not go against that. That's not our job. If they have issues with that, they can come and talk to me, they can talk to another mentor about it. What they have to do, what their job is, okay, what their work is to help the mentor, the veteran, understand what they have to do in order to meet the expectation of what the court is telling them that they have to do. That's the work that has to be done. And if they have an interference with that, and I'm aware of it, then I sit down with them and say, we got to talk about this. You know, you can't have your feelings about what the court is saying interfere with the work you have to do with the veteran. Okay? Don't feed into that. They'll feed off of that. It's not going to work. So we work hard at trying to do that as much as we possibly can. And I think, again, I think you know, like I said, that's kind of the relationship. The relationship, again, with Anoka County as a court is one that they want mentors in their program. They want us to be there. They're very respectful about our confidentiality rule. They're very understanding about what we do, okay? And they want us to be part of that court. And that's why we're there, you know, because that court and people that run the court really want us to be there. And so it's, like Ryan said, it's one of the best courts in the state.
And as the veterans move through the program, are there particular benchmarks or specific times in their progress that you find the mentor's role is most important?
Yeah, it goes back to, okay, I'm going to take answer this in the big picture. I kind of struggle with this question because I can think of a number of individual ones, but I think, again, about the work that has to be done when a veteran won't play tennis, okay? And mentor can see what needs to be done. They understand how the direction that the veteran can probably go. And if they get too far ahead of them, like I said, it doesn't work, there's conflict, and it's going to fail. So it goes back to, we've done a lot of work about accepting that it's their choice, how fast they go, their directions that they go, and the best you can do is continue to coach, continue to challenge, continue whatever might be something that can motivate them, but eventually they're the ones that makes the decision, okay? What happens with the mentor is that the mentor starts to feel like they're not doing nothing. Nothing's happening here. I can't get the guy to move. This is not working out. And all of those things need to be, that belong to them need to be worked out so that they can start to understand that they are second and the veteran is first, and the veteran makes the choices. Always the veteran makes the choices. Now, I've worked with a number of them, and it takes them time, but the reality of it is that sometimes all of a sudden one day, the veteran says, let's play tennis. Well, that's because they finally hit a point where they made their choices. They worked through their addiction, they're working through their trauma, they're working through whatever they have to work through, and the mentor is, if they're doing what to help them, they're standing there waiting for them to come. Okay? And when they're there, tennis can start. And so the big picture on that is that you have to be able to just accept that pace, okay, and not judge yourself. And that's kind of one of those big benchmarks that I think is really critical across the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to give our audience a feel for how intense your job as a mentor can be by talking through an example experience that you've had. Ryan, was there a moment that was either extremely challenging or that looking back at you see as a turning point in a veteran's development?
Certainly, and I'll maintain the veteran's confidence, of course. You know, he said, "You're welcome to use my name," and you know, we don't do that. But I've been working with this veteran for 7 years, and he did great, graduated, and continued on. There was I want to keep this quick. There was domestic abuse involved, and his wife was abusive toward him, and he really struggled through that. I got a phone call one night. This was just 6 or 9 months ago, and he was slurring, and he said, you know, I'd taken a bottle of Xanax or something like that, and I have my gun, and I could hear her screaming in the background. And I said, hey, you know, I got my daughters here. I didn't have my daughters. I got to call you right back. I hung up the phone. I called 911. I let him know the address, the veteran's name. He had a gun. He took pills, and there was a dangerous situation there, so that they could send police and, you know, whatever needed to happen. And then I called him back, and I talked to him until he passed out or whatever, and then I could hear he dropped the phone. I heard the police come in, and the situation was secured. After he was at the hospital, you know, I visited him. Obviously, he survived, and he went to St. Cloud treatment, and we continued staying in touch regularly, and then he came back to the VA for another program. It was either PPH or an inpatient psych stay, and you know, he's recovered from that, and this finally moved him. You know, you talk about a transformation in his life. He finally, you know, we'd been talking about this for years, but he finally divorced his wife, and you know, it was a difficult decision for him. I obviously can't make that decision for anybody. I just supported him along the way until he made that decision for his own well-being. And now, you know, now he's happy. You know, it's only a few months past, and we stay in touch every week and get together for coffee occasionally. So, I mean, this mentorship relationship doesn't, you know, it doesn't end on some, you know, graduation date. You know, these are human beings, and we develop a bond, and we come close. And that's the case with this man, or this veteran, and I. And I'll continue to be there for him, but he helps me as well. We help each other. You know, we're battle buddies, or whatever you want to call it. There's no hierarchy in the relationship anymore, not after graduation. And this is real life. You know, from day one, it's real life. And I appreciate everything you said about a mentor's job. Really appreciate that. So I mean, that was a challenging situation that is going to end up well. And all I did was really listen and be supportive and visit him in the hospital and just let him know that he wasn't alone when he had nobody else to be there for him.
That's great. Must be a lot of weight to bear, though, getting that call late at night like that.
I mean, I happen to be familiar with that, which is okay. I mean, and there's, on the other side, you know, I mentored a veteran and got to be the best man at his wedding. And you know, and there's seeing the transformation that I had nothing to do with. The veteran was just willing, and I showed up, and he did all the work, right? And he's living his life. I love that. I love watching that.
That's excellent. Turning to you, Paul, would you tell us about an experience with a veteran or managing a mentor where you look back at it as pivotal to the veteran's success?
Sure, I'm going to go big picture again on this one. In January of this year, I sent out an information email saying, give me some ideas. I sent it out to all the mentors. Give me some ideas about kind of training that you would like. I had some ideas about that, but I wanted theirs. And overwhelmingly came back that there was a need for suicide prevention, okay? So in April, we had Tony Miller come out, who's a veteran a mentor of Veterans Court, and he is also an individual, a combat vet, and he works for the Minneapolis VA in the suicide prevention department. So he came out, did a great training with us, had a great slideshow show. We did some talking back and forth about, let's ask the questions about what are the 4 questions, and about if somebody's possibly going to commit suicide or thinking about suicide, that sort of thing. And what happened is that what helped, the beautiful part about this training was we opened up. And what we opened up was the realization we weren't ready. We weren't ready to prevent suicide. We didn't know what to do. And part of it was the stigma related to even talking about the conversation. The other part of it was that it was just a fear of being close to somebody that might be suicidal. Okay, that all had to be flushed out. It all had to be taken care of in some way. It had to be released. And I mean, when we talked about the questions about, okay, Tony said, well, just role model asking somebody, we're sitting next to you or across from you, are you thinking about killing yourself? Some of the mentors couldn't even get it out. It just upset them so much. Okay, and so that was the powerful component about that, is that we knew we weren't ready. By the end of the in-service, we started to put things down on paper about how are we going to handle this, what's it going to look like, what are we going to do, okay? And we also had one mentor. He shared that he had a very close family member who was part of a homicide, suicide, and that was the experience of his family, okay? And so he talked about that. It really helped us kind of settle us down as a group. And there were 7 of us there, okay? And so it was a real intimate kind of experience that we were able to have. And it solidified that we really can learn, we can really do something about this, okay? And I think that was the benchmark, okay? Do I think we're totally ready? No, but I think we're much more prepared. We've got a couple of mentors right now that are working with individual veterans that have a lot of suicide idealizations. Part of the plan is that that mentor has that as part of their conversation every time they meet, okay? That there's a discussion about it, that it comes up just like how you doing in court, or what's going on with your marriage, or whatever it might be, you know, those kinds of things. Whatever the conversation, it becomes part of it. What I've done is every time we have a training, I make sure that I provide time where we can talk about suicide. So we can keep breaking down that stigma, keep breaking down the issues related to our own concerns about it and how we handle it. So,
That's really great, man.
yeah, thanks.
Brock and I often find in our practice that we get as much emotional reward out of working with our fellow veterans as we give back to them. Ryan, what do you feel is you get back as a mentor?
The opportunity to see somebody grow really inspires me to want to better my own life. And giving away what has been freely given to me fills my life with purpose. I mean, I've been fortunate, and I'm grateful to have been involved in that process for 30 years, right? I grew up with that, and that feeds my soul and it feeds my purpose. And to share that with another human being and say, hey, look at this, look what you can do. You can share this with other people, and this will change your life and fill you with purpose and fulfillment. And you won't have to use drugs and alcohol and sex and gambling and shopping, blah, 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 and it works. And so the opportunity to give that away, right? And it comes back. I don't know how or when or what, but it does. You know, I may give you 1,000, or 1,000 ways, but it's wonderful.
Thank you. Paul, I know you're always trying to recruit new mentors, so I'm going to end by giving you the opportunity to do a little bit of that here. What would you tell anyone considering becoming a mentor about what they can get out of the program and why it's a good thing for them to do?
I would start by saying study yourself. Really find out if you really can do the work, okay? And I say that because I've interviewed other individuals that say, I want to be a mentor, and then I start laying out right away, this is the work that has to be done, this is how we do it, okay? And they start to say, I don't think I can do that. And you got to appreciate their honesty, okay? And so you want to be able to study yourself and start to recognize that when you are working with somebody, you are providing the highest level of services that you could possibly provide another person to help them change their life. The other thing that's really important is just being able to just recognize that when you do that kind of work, you got to stay committed. This is not, when I recruit, I say it's 18 to 2 years if you're matched with an individual veteran in the court, that as far as being their mentor, okay? And that's not easy duty. I mean, there's lots of ups and downs that go along with it, okay? Lots of things that can change, and that can be very disruptive to the mentor personally themselves. So another thing that I tell them, that I think I want to tell all of you, is that make sure you understand what that role looks like. What does it mean to really be a mentor, okay? And then I always encourage you that if you decide to be a mentor, make sure that you surround yourself with support systems so you can get the appropriate help if you need it when you're working with a veteran. Things go both ways in those relationships. They're beautiful relationships and wonderful things can happen, okay? But sometimes it comes your way and you've got to be able to prepare yourself in such a way so that you can handle it. Can you have somebody at the VA? Do you have somebody at the vet center? Do you have a family member that you can't necessarily disclose what's going on, but you can share what your emotions are, or something, somewhere or another, you're taking care of yourself. Remember, you're always going to be second in this relationship because the veteran is first, okay? And that's how their needs are first, but yours are a close second. And so taking care of yourself is an absolute critical component to be a mentor, and staying balanced is in order to be able to do those kind of interactions, or build those kind of relationships.
Ryan and Paul, I want to thank you on behalf of our audience for being so candid and open and really giving a lot of yourself today. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brett Kelly. I'm a member of the Board of Directors, and I'm also the incoming Vice Chair. It is my absolute pleasure this evening to introduce our next speaker and fellow board member, also a fellow Minnesotan, General Joseph L. Votel. General Votel is a retired United States Army four-star officer and the former commander of U.S. Central Command. He was responsible for U.S. and coalition military operations in the Middle East, Levant, Central, and South Asia. During his 39 years in the military, he commanded special operations and conventional military forces at every level. His career included combat operations in Panama, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Notably, General Votel led a 79-member coalition that successfully liberated Iraq and Syria from the Islamic State Caliphate. Before his assignment at CENTCOM, General Votel was a commander of U.S. Special Operations Command and the Joint Special Operations Command. He's a 1980 graduate from the United States Military Academy and earned master's degrees from both the U.S. Army Command and Staff College and the U.S. Army War College. General Votel could not be here tonight due to a pre-existing obligation, but I am confident you will enjoy this next video. Without further ado.
I'm General Joe Votel, and I'm excited to have joined the Board of Directors of the Veteran Defense Project. As a native of St. Paul, Minnesota, who returned home following my retirement, I have been heartened to learn what the VDP has accomplished to help Minnesota veterans who have fallen into the justice system. I look forward to supporting the VDP as we work to help veterans across the country who have fallen into the justice system, restoring them to the communities they served. I had the honor of serving for 39 years in the U.S. Army, much of it in America's wars after 9/11. I led Army Rangers who parachuted into Afghanistan a month after that fateful September day, and then spent the next 18 years leading our forces in combat there, as well as in Iraq, Syria, and elsewhere, including service as commander of all U.S. Special Operations Forces, and then later as the commander of all U.S. military forces assigned to the U.S. Central Command, encompassing an area that included the Levant, the Middle East, and Central and South Asia. These continuing conflicts have already spanned more than 20 years, the longest in our nation's history, and the Americans who have served and sacrificed in them have become our longest, most heavily deployed generation of veterans. While most have returned home stronger and wiser, immediate assets to our communities, our next greatest generation, the strain of these extended conflicts have also resulted in many bringing their war experiences home with them through historically high rates of post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, and other related conditions. Untreated, these invisible injuries can often lead to self-medication with alcohol and other substances, and self-destructive, reckless, and sometimes violent behaviors that bring them in contact with the criminal justice system. As a nation, we have a sacred obligation to recognize their service and sacrifice and a role it has played when they find themselves in our justice system. Our obligation is to help them back on their feet, treating their wounds of war and providing them the opportunity to earn redemption and join their fellow veterans as assets to our communities. We must also recognize that America's veterans of our modern conflicts are the most highly trained and experienced warfighters in our history. Many have put those skills to work in protecting our communities after their return home as members of law enforcement, first responders, and in many other capacities. For those who are suffering from the untreated invisible injuries, however, that training and experience makes them an outsized risk to public safety. When those behaviors bring them in contact with the justice system, a therapeutic intervention, holding them accountable while addressing those underlying mental health and substance abuse issues is often the most effective way to protect public safety. The Veterans Defense Project is doing valuable work to ensure our legal system honors the promise we made to do everything we can to bring our veterans home from war and make them whole again. By creating policies that provide justice-involved veterans a path towards restoration as law-abiding citizens, the VDP is reshaping the criminal courts into a system that can identify struggling veterans and connect them with the services needed to rehabilitate. By collecting and analyzing the data from veterans being rehabilitated, the VDP is refining best practices to allow these veterans to thrive in their families and communities as they once did in service to our country. As I reflect on my decision to join the Veterans Defense Project, I am struck by the incredible stories this restorative justice approach has made possible. Hector Matacastillo, one of the veterans recognized at last year's event, served as one of my Rangers. Though his untreated psychological injuries led him to an armed standoff with the police, he was given an opportunity for redemption. He made the most of it, going on to become a nationally recognized trauma therapist and crisis negotiator for the police. Other veterans, whose stories you will hear tonight, have similarly made the most of their opportunities for redemption, each becoming unique assets to their communities. Since the Veterans Restorative Justice Act passed in Minnesota in 2021, the VDP has remained active in promoting these policies on the national level. The VDP's founders, Brock Hunter and Ryan Else, have been working with the Veterans Justice Commission, led by former Defense Secretaries Chuck Hagel and Leon Panetta, creating a model policy framework and law, the Veterans Justice Act, based on this approach, and helping it to pass into law in Nebraska earlier this year. As we honor Veterans Day this year, I call on you to go beyond saying thank you for your service by supporting the Veterans Defense Project. The VDP has much work ahead of us, supporting passage of the Veterans Justice Act in states across America, collecting and analyzing data to refine the best practices that drive these veterans to greater success, and recruiting members of our communities to support our justice-involved veterans as mentors. Together, we can break the cycle of veteran trauma, ensure safer futures for our communities, and help our veterans in the justice system redeem themselves and join the rest of their peers as assets to the communities they so proudly served.
Good evening. I'm Brock Hunter, along with Ryan Else, one of the co-founders of the Veterans Defense Project. It's my honor this evening to introduce Berlin Fleury. You may recognize Berlin in her role in past events, particularly serving on a panel with Tony Miller, who Paul Evangelist mentioned earlier, as well as appearing in a number of our videos that we've released over the years advocating for veterans' justice. This year, Berlin took point on organizing this evening's event. And she is going... If you've heard Berlin talk before, you've heard her tell her story of service and sacrifice with the United States Marine Corps in Afghanistan. Her story of bringing her war home with her and subsequently falling into the criminal justice system. And ultimately of finding a path to redemption through the Ramsey County Veterans Treatment Court. I first met Berlin a little over 5 years ago as she was nearing graduation from Veterans Treatment Court. And it has been an honor and a pleasure to see what she has done with the second chance that she was given. In the 5 years I've known Berlin, she has completed a bachelor's degree in human services. She has worked as a certified peer specialist at the VA, assisting other justice-involved veterans following in her footsteps. She's since moved on to the Amherst Wilder Foundation, where she currently works as a mental health practitioner. She's joined the board of the Veterans Defense Project, where she serves on our executive committee as secretary, and she currently serves as a mentor in the Hennepin County Veterans Treatment Court. Berlin is now preparing to begin her next chapter, pursuing a master's degree in social work and ultimately a career helping other veterans following in her footsteps. Berlin exemplifies what the VDP stands for, providing that path to redemption for veterans who fall into the justice system so that they can join the rest of their fellow veterans as assets to the communities that they served. Berlin?
I'd like to start by personally thanking our sponsors, our donors, and our supporters. It's because of you that I'm standing here today. Without your generosity, tonight wouldn't have been possible, and I wouldn't be standing here today. I've had the honor and the privilege of serving with the Veterans Defense Project for the last 3 years, and the question that I am asked the most is, how do we know that these programs work? I'm living proof that these programs work. Some of you have followed my journey, and for those of you who haven't, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old, barely. I wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to be somebody. I was a child with big hopes and big dreams. By the time I was 20 years old, I had deployed, experienced military sexual trauma, been medically evacuated, and been forced out of the service. I'd experienced moral injury. I was still a child, but I didn't have any hopes, and I didn't have any dreams. And now that I have a platform, I'd like to take the opportunity to share with you that the definition of military sexual trauma is any unwanted sexual conduct perpetrated by anyone during any time that you served. And you can imagine the shame that follows an experience like that. The self-hatred, the confusion. What a fall from grace. I began using drugs while actively serving, and by the time I was 22, I was charged with not my first, not my second, not my third, but my fourth felony. I was homeless. I was a United States Marine Corps veteran. who was a college dropout and had nothing to live for. Ten years later, I'm so much more. I went from being homeless to a homeowner, from being a college dropout to a college graduate, from jailhouse burritos to boardrooms. I went from a felon to a federal employee. I became an asset to my community. Veterans Treatment Court didn't just restore me back to my community. They did a full-blown remodel. They made me a super asset. Veterans Treatment Court made it possible for me to help more people than I ever hurt. They gave me back the hope, and they turned my big dreams into realities. But what's interesting is that in some circles, and even in this very room, someone still thinks I'm just a criminal. I'm not a criminal, and we are not criminals. I'm someone's daughter. I'm someone's sister. I'm a lover, I'm a healer, I'm an advocate, and I'm a comeback story, and I'm worth investing in. And I'm not the only one. When I was elected as secretary of the VDP and given the opportunity to chair this event, I knew it wasn't just an opportunity for me, but it was also an opportunity for my peers to share their experience, their strength, and their hope. The stories that you hear tonight are just a fraction of the success that's found in veterans treatment courts. I encourage you to open your minds and soften your hearts and see us for the individuals that we are, for the super assets that we are. I am pleased to introduce our next moderator, Evan Tsai, a fearless advocate. Evan is a United States Marine Corps veteran. Yut! He's an assistant county attorney with the Anoka County's Attorney's Office. And before that, Evan served as assistant public defender with Ramsey County, which is where he met yours truly. He's served as former board chair of the Veterans Defense Project, and he has become a trusted confidant on my personal board of directors. And I am so honored and grateful to have you defend me, and to have you lead me, and to have you moderate this panel.
Can we give Berlin one more round of applause, please? What? This is for Berlin, right? Hey, Devil Dog, they're clapping for you. Well done. Thank you for the kind words. What I think Berlin has not mentioned, and I hope you're okay with me mentioning this, but I represented Berlin as a public defender in Ramsey County's Veterans Treatment Court. When I first met Berlin, she was everything that she said she was. She seemed like a person with no hope. She seemed like a person that I think she believed that she didn't have a future until she realized that she made it possible. And then she took that possibility and ran with it and has become such an extraordinary human being. I am so proud of you, Marine. I am so elated that you do the good work that you do. And look at everybody around here. You did that. Well done. Well, Berlin, you conned me into doing this panel, and so I suppose it's time that I introduce our panel members. Travis Bennett, where are you at, man? This is Travis Bennett, ladies and gentlemen. He's served with our beloved United States Army between 2012 and 2019 during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He is currently a participant, am I correct? Yes. He's currently a participant in Hennepin County's Veterans Treatment Court. He serves as a firefighter. He's a
teacher of fire safety at Hennepin Technical College, and he serves on the board of directors for Minnesota Warriors as its director of fundraising. Travis, as I understand, was just recently recognized and honored by the Minnesota Wild for his work with veterans in the hockey community. Say hi to Travis, folks. Sit. And I'd also like to introduce Heather Gordon. Heather, where are you at? Everybody is boot to somebody, and I am boot to Heather. So it's true. Heather served in the United States Navy from 1992 to 1999, and after her moral injury and after her trauma, she found herself in the legal system, which happens to everybody. She did participate and graduated from the Blue Earth County Veterans Treatment Court. Now she's a mother of 3 kids. She's currently attending a university to become, to get her master's degree in art therapy, right? And she also volunteers with the Silent Warrior Project, hosting spiritual retreats and for first responders and for veterans. Folks, please say hi to Heather for me. It would be remiss of me not to recognize the people in this room that have served. For those of you who have served our beloved military, please stand. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Marines, sound off. Happy birthday. We are 249 years old. None of you look a day over 203. All right. So let's start with Travis. Travis, tell everybody about your transition from the military, out of the military to civilian life, and the challenges that you faced.
Yeah, first I just want to, say thank you to our mentors who went in that panel before us. I really believe the mentors are the backbone of treatment court. My mentor's sitting in the crowd right now, and I'm gonna choke up a little bit, but Joe, thank you. Wouldn't be sitting here today without your help. Yeah, my transition was very difficult. Late 2016, 2017, I had just transitioned from active to National Guard. I was working full-time at Holman Airfield for the National Guard, and we had gotten deployment orders. So I was going with my unit to Iraq. We went through XCTC down at Fort Hood, Texas in 2017, rolled into 2018, getting ready to deploy in 2019. We just had to get through NTC at Fort Irwin, California. May of 2018, I had a training accident. Came out of a helicopter a little hot, found the ground a little faster than I wanted to. Completed the mission, went back to Doc, and I was like, Doc, my hip's killing me. Could you just kind of pop it out of place? Last thing I remember saying was, oh. I woke up in a helicopter. I had slammed my femoral bone so hard up into my hip. I had flattened my femoral bone, tore all my cartilage, 3 muscles in my hip, and both my rotator cuffs. This was a year before a deployment. I put off having surgery because I didn't want to miss deploying with my boys. We had trained for it, and I wanted to go. So I worked. Late September, I had to sit down with my first sergeant, and I needed to have surgery. They pulled my orders for deployment. Had my first surgery 14 days before my 26th birthday, my golden birthday. Couple months later, had a second surgery, and I got the news that I was done in the military. I had just re-signed, was planning to do 20 years, and I was being medically discharged. I didn't have a plan B, didn't know what to do. I knew the military since, as a college dropout, thought I could play college football, but I'm under 6 foot, so it didn't make a good wide receiver. And I didn't know what to do. So I started drinking. I didn't have to go to much of the training being in the National Guard that my unit was going to. I was injured, I couldn't. So there was lots of drinking, and that's all I would turn to. I couldn't work. I was collecting a paycheck and sitting in my 1-bedroom apartment drinking. And as time went by, I counted down that day until I was out and just felt like a forgotten toy. I felt like I was in Toy Story 5. Andy had just kind of thrown me away. And, you know, your buddies stop texting you all the time. They don't call you out to get drinks after or drill weekend. And I didn't know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. I had been coaching youth hockey, but couldn't skate with a broken hip. So I really turned to alcohol and THC to cope with it, which led me down the road to some legal issues. A couple times.
I'm not going to ask you about your legal issues.
Oh, I'm perfectly okay talking about
Oh, I
it.
know, but you also have a right not to incriminate yourself. Just saying. You guys laugh. So I guess what you're saying is transition wasn't great.
Yeah, it was not a great transition. A lot of struggles and a lot of learning things the hard way, I'd say.
Fair. Heather, we got out around the same time. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I would suspect that you also had a difficult transition from Navy time to civilian time. Before I ask you that question, Travis, what was your rank in MOS when you got out?
So the rank they gave me wasn't the rank I was wearing, unfortunately. I got out as a specialist. I also been selected to go to BLC to be a sergeant, but that got put on the back burner as well. And when I got out, I was a 15 Tango, so I was a Black Hawk crew chief.
Cool. Heather, what's your rank and rate?
I was a photographer's mate, 3rd class petty officer.
Outstanding. Outstanding. So you're a non-commissioned officer.
Well,
Look at me. Yes.
yeah, yes.
So tell us about your transition from military life to civilian life.
Well, my transition was a difficult one. I started, it felt like a slow, painful descent for me. My trauma didn't show up for about 13 years after the military. When I got out of the military in the 90s, there were not very many resources. There especially were not resources for women. And if there were, you really had to dig for them. When my trauma surfaced, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I was lost. It was easier to bottle it up than to tell someone about it. You're taught in the military to be a killing machine. You're taught to keep fighting, to keep going. And when you get out, there really isn't that shift. You just keep it quiet. And because I did that, and it resurfaced so many years later, that really made me feel lost. And because my wounds were invisible, and I still was not, I still didn't have the title of PTSD. I had no name for what my addiction really was.
Well, PTSD didn't exist, or I mean, we didn't really know anything about post-traumatic stress back in the 90s, right?
Right.
And I can see you struggling to not use the 3 words that everybody here that served in the military has been told and has told other people, right? You know what those 3 words are? Suck it up.
Yes, it is.
Right? I see everybody nodding their heads. Yeah, suck it up. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
That's okay. Yeah, so I turned to alcohol. I used that to cover up whatever this was that I was feeling. I ended up in the Minneapolis VA psych ward after an attempted suicide. I'm a little nervous. Woo. My symptoms turned to major depression. I turned to drugs and alcohol, as I said, and I went through my second divorce because of my new symptoms. I ended up as a single mother at that point, thank you very much, with 3 small children at home, and I had no job. It was time for me to suck it up. And that was when things got worse for me. It was really at that point that I turned to hard street drugs, and that was my way to get through the day.
It sounds terrible. So your transition wasn't great either.
No.
Sure. Travis, I'd like to turn to you. I mean, you're in court now, and now you have the benefit of hindsight. How do you think your time in the military, what you experienced in the military, with deployments, with all of the work that you did, how do you think that contributed to the circumstances that put you in Veterans Treatment Court?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 big factors that really played a part in my journey and kind of what molded me from the military. But the first one, kind of we've been touching on it all night, is the mental health. And you just said those 3 magical words. I think when I had written out my pre-notes, I used those words. I've been told to suck it up, you know, multiple times. You're a veteran. Suck it up. You're overreacting. You're what are you talking about? I think the stigma of not being able to say, hey, this sucks, you know. At a young age, you move across the country. That sucks. You know, not being able to go home and see your family for years or, you know, months at a time, adding in all the, you know, hurry up and wait and do this, and you're worthless for a little bit of time, and then you're just a little less worthless until you make NCO, and you're worthless just you get to yell at people. But you don't get to talk about your mental health. I would always say I needed to talk to the chaplain to hide my mental health struggles instead of going to, you know, the psych ward or the behavioral health. You know, everyone in the military base knows what floor psych is on at the military hospital, and it's a joke. Everyone jokes, oh, it's up on 11 Bravo. You don't want to go there. And so I would sneakily, you know, meet up with the chaplain with Bible questions to say, I'm struggling, and can you just give me a Bible verse to read? But then the second factor is we kind of solve things in-house. You know, if one of your buddies in the room wasn't cleaning up his room very well and you guys got in trouble for it, we had pillow parties, you know. How'd you get those bruises? Fell down the stairs. That was the answer. A lot of fights and little things in the barracks that wouldn't get out, but we solved them ourselves. We didn't, you know, need the NCOs and the officers to help us when you're a junior enlisted. It was, well, we're not going to let anyone else hear about this, and we'll take care of it ourselves. And I think that also played a large role into it, as I don't need help. I can solve these myself, and I didn't want to talk about the things. I didn't want to talk about the struggles. I just wanted to bottle everything up, and it would turn into anger, not always physical anger, but, you know, just things that I would say, you know, that would cut deep, that would hurt my family and friends. But I think that's just some of the things that I had learned in there that were just, it's part of the culture.
I feel it. Heather, I want to turn to you. So we've been out of the military for 25 years, and you said earlier that a lot of your trauma and the symptoms of that trauma didn't actually surface until a decade and a half later. How did that trauma, and really your service in the Navy, how did that ultimately impact your life and lead you to Veterans Treatment Court in Mankato?
Well, when I had really dug myself in a hole and thought that I had things under control, things were very not under control. I just lost track of what we were saying.
How did you end up in Veterans Treatment Court? Or put a different way, how did your service in the Navy, how did the trauma that you felt bubbling up, you know, a decade and a half later, how did that impact your life? And how did that lead you to end up in vet court?
Well, knowing that I was out of control was a hard fact to swallow. I knew I needed help. And I was told by another veteran about Veterans Court when I was just a couple days out from going into court and having to face the music in a civilian court. And I knew that there was more to it than that for me, that this anger and rage that I felt, let me back up a little bit, I was charged with assault. And that's when I knew that I needed help. It's so uncharacteristic of who I really am, and to see that rage and feel all of that just surface uncontrollably on a situation where it just never should have been, very uncharacteristic of me. I started asking people, you know, what do I do? Civilian court is not going to understand that I am angry from 13 years ago. It's just not going to be a thing. So when this veteran told me about Veterans Court, I was all in. I called them myself, and I really needed to make a change.
Have you met people since graduating that have expressed an interest in participating in Veterans Treatment Court?
I have.
And what do you tell them?
Well, I've actually sent a couple people towards Veterans Court. Veterans understand veterans. Plain and simple, black and white. There is no one else that can relate to the things that we've experienced.
I'm going to veer off script a little bit and ask you another question. What is it about the Veterans Treatment Court experience that was your catharsis, that was your way to heal?
While I was in Veterans Court, and I am also going off script, I was in a horrible car accident. And in that car accident, I had enough time to think about whether I was going to die or not. And that was my turning point. When I realized I was still alive, I got out of the emergency room and I called everyone that was in charge of me. First I called my mentor, and we had a very long talk. And she stayed with me until the moment that I entered the jail that night. And she was on the phone with me until the door clicked shut. That was the point where I knew that if I could not be honest with myself, that I was never going to get past these problems.
Cool. Travis, how about you? Tell me about your experience in Hennepin's Veterans Treatment Court.
So I actually went through Anoka and Hennepin. So yeah, plot twist.
Dun, dun, dun.
Didn't see it coming.
No.
I don't know if you want to call it unfortunately. There's pros and cons to I guess going through too, but I hit my head against the wall many times, trying to figure out what I kept doing to make the poor decisions I was and putting myself in the poor positions I was putting myself in. You know, I'm not a bad person. I don't have evil in my heart, but I would put myself in those situations that would lead to me, you know, being in a jail cell. And, you know, you go through, it's almost like basic training. I don't want to say it's easy. You know, it was not easy. There were days I wanted to quit and call my lawyer or call my mentor or whoever from the court and say, yo, I just go to jail for 6 months. I'm tired of this. It's a Wednesday. I don't want to drive to take a UA. I don't have the energy. I want to get drunk this weekend with my friends. And, you know, there were a lot of days that I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up, but I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because they find what you need to be successful. Not everyone has to do the same, check the boxes, here's your path, this is how you're going to get successful. Everyone's story, everyone's reason behind why they are here today is different, And it took me forever, and I knew I had PTSD from some of the stuff that I had dealt with, and I always just kind of blamed it on that. But going through, my second round of different counties vet court, when I reached out to Hennepin and got into that, I found out I have survivor's guilt. Missing that deployment in 2019 and seeing the news early 2020 of Syria bombing the base, that was my unit. Those were my friends. They had been sent to Germany. And so I was trying to treat my PTSD the whole time, and beating my head against the wall to save that and fix that, when the issue was my survivor's guilt. And that was causing my anger. And without Hennepin County Treatment Court and Anoka too, which got me going down the right path, I would not have been able to actually address that issue. I would not have ever found that issue just because of all the resources they have. Endless amount of resources for everyone to really better themselves.
What's your advice to somebody that's about to jump into the deep end of Veterans Treatment Court?
Do it, and don't just check the boxes, but live it. Get to know your mentor. Have a good relationship with your mentor. They've been in your shoes before. They are there to guide you. You don't have to take the same path that they took to be successful, but when you have missing directions and missing pieces on your path, they're there for you. And have a good relationship with your probation officer. They're not there to see you fail. They are there to hold you accountable. Because once you graduate from Vets Court, once you're done checking in with the judge every couple of weeks and taking the UAs, they're really building you up with that success to continue that accountability to not come back and not be a recycle. So I would say live it. Don't just check the boxes, but fully immerse yourself. Have the struggles, have the ups, have the downs, but celebrate your success at the end of the day.
You have any kids?
I have a 3-year-old.
And when your kid is, when your son becomes,
Yeah.
when your son becomes of a particular age where he can understand the things that you've been through, what would you tell him?
I read that question on the thing, and
I didn't get it either, man.
and I had to think for a while, and unfortunately, being labeled a criminal, the first word that kept popping into my mind was the word disappointment. But my son's never going to be disappointed in me. I'm raising him to be a Minnesota sports fan. So,
Aww.
that was a good one.
That was terrible.
But, when I finally get to explain to my son what I did and what I went through, I want him to understand the word failure. Everyone in this room is a failure. We've all failed. And I want him to understand that no one makes it to the top. No one gets to be successful. No one gets to help others without failing. You think Michael Jordan made his first free throw? Probably not. He didn't even make his varsity roster. Tom Brady wasn't taken to the 6th round. It's okay to be a failure. The thing that separates you from being a complete failure and being successful is when you look at your failures and you say, hey, I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to do that again. And you slowly grow. I failed so many times during my journey, but each little failure gave me not only a nugget for myself to be better that I can share with my son, but share with others along their path.
Heather, you've got 3 kids. What do you tell your kids about you?
I did not want my children to look back at life and remember their mother buried in the ground as that addict that gave up on life. I want my children to know the success story of their mother. I am worth it, and so are they. And showing my children that it's so important to never give up and to keep persevering and to have that resilience, that life is worth it and the fight is there. But yeah,
So do either of you come across people that still look at you and think, or maybe even outright just say, like, that person's a criminal? I mean, have you ever, has that happened to you, at least recently? To either of you?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's assume that, you know, somebody says, Travis, you're an effing criminal. What do you tell them?
I'm okay with that. I blanked out on what I said now on that note, and I had something cool written, I feel like, but no, I'll go off script. I recently got engaged, and
Congratulations, man.
might be a different kind of jail sentence.
Read the room, man.
She's not here, so it's fine. But I recently got engaged, and one thing that my fiance tells me when I'm just having those days when I hit the wall is that early on when we started dating, I told her that my goal in life, because I can't take anything with me after life, is to make the difference in a million people's lives. That's all I want to do. And I'm sitting here right now, and you know, we're talking about criminals and how technically if you run a background check on me, I'm labeled a criminal, but I don't care about that title, because you can call me that all you want, but it's not going to change the hard work and the sacrifice I put in to make those differences. I'm looking out at the crowd and I'm blinded, but I play for the Minnesota Warriors. One of my hockey teammates is here right now. He's in pre-law at Hamlin University, and he's coming here, and that's a life I'm impacting. I have multiple others that know I'm here today that if they hadn't been working wanted to show up, and I've impacted so many lives as a criminal, more than most people can say they have as a non-criminal. So go ahead and call me a criminal, because I'm not. At the end of the day, I'm a father, I'm a teacher, and most of all, I'm a success story. A success story. Can't talk.
How about you, Heather? Somebody comes up to you and says, you're a criminal. What do you tell them?
I'm not a criminal. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm an artist. And I am a success.
Thank you. For those of you that have yet to see what a veterans court or a treatment court looks like, I recommend you go find one. I recommend you sit down and you watch and you listen. Veterans treatment courts save lives. And they save lives because they recognize, as you recognize from Heather and Travis, that these are people. These are people that answer to a higher calling. These are people that have been broken, but that doesn't mean they're without salvation. These are people that have stories, that have lives, and are as impactful in their communities as all of you are and can be. Thanks for hanging out.
Evening, I'm Hank Shea. I'm the chair of the board of the Veterans Defense Project. I'm an Army veteran, as were my father and my grandfather, who fought in Korea and in the First World War. I'm also a senior fellow here at the University of St. Thomas School of Law, and I want to start by thanking Dean Kelly and the entire law school community for hosting us today and for supporting us. Some of you know, but maybe not everybody, this is the third year that St. Thomas has hosted us here, and every year it gets better and better. I want to thank Lieutenant Colonel Leah Meyer, University of St. Thomas, the commander of the ROTC unit, and also for the cadets, the Air Force ROTC cadets who presented our colors here today. I want to extend a very warm repeat thanks to Anna Johnson, Maybe you picked up or not, this is the third year in a row that she has come and sung the national anthem to honor the veterans in her family, and we're going to keep having her come back as many times as we can. Thank you, Anna. The VDP is also grateful to our event sponsors. You've heard reference to them, but we have two lead sponsors who really made the event possible tonight, Arnold Ventures and the Holbach Family Foundation. We have a number of other sponsors. You'll see them up here on the screen later on, but we want to thank the Polad Companies, Luther Auto, the Minneapolis office of the Jones Day Law Firm, Gap Incorporated, the Schwabel Law Firm, our wonderful fundraising consultants, Greater Good Strategy, and then finally, let me offer a special recognition to the American Legion. We have partnered with the American Legion for many years. They were key instrumental partners in getting the Minnesota legislature to pass the Minnesota Veteran Restorative Justice Act. We're honored tonight to have several Legion members here. Dr. Carl Moon is the state commander for this year, and Lee Tollickson is from St. Louis Park. He's with the American Legion Post 282 that reached out to us to help sponsor this event, and we look forward to a great future relationship with all of the American Legion members who are here and online. I think it's hard to encapsulate how much time and effort Berlin Fleury put in to this program tonight. I mean, the speakers, General Clybourne, thank you in particular to you, but the panels, the moderators, this is all her brainchild, her gift. And let's, one more time, thank Berlin Fleury and all of our participants. I want to take just a moment to remember two of our very special VDP board members. They played crucial roles in what the VDP is today. Keith LeBlanc passed away in August, and he was a Vietnam vet. He was a volunteer mentor with the Ramsey County Veteran Treatment Court. He was on the VDP board for almost ever, and he was our board chair, and we are touched and we are honored to have his widow here with us tonight, Sandy LeBlanc. We gave her some roses earlier tonight. She was hoping to sit with Tammy Orpett, Pete Orpett's widow. Pete passed a number of years ago, but we still mourn him. He was maybe the most important person ultimately in getting prosecutors in this state to stand together and support the Minnesota Veterans Restorative Justice Act. Vietnam vet, Washington County attorney, started his own veteran treatment court. Didn't have the cooperation that he was hoping to get from unnamed others, and went out and recruited the judges and the probation officers and the prosecutors and the defense lawyers and started his own veteran treatment court. Tammy had to just find out today that she couldn't be here, but she's certainly in our thoughts, and we'll find a way to get that rose to her. But let's show both Tammy Orpett and also Sandy LeBlanc our support and our gratitude. So we hope you've enjoyed today's program. For those who are here in person, we hope you'll join us for appetizers and non-alcoholic drinks. We want to continue the discussion. The mentors, the Veteran Treatment Court graduates, everybody who's participated will stick around. We have members of the Veterans Defense Project Board who've flown in from around the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast, and it would be great to be able to meet more of you in person. So please join us if you're able. For those of you who want continuing legal education credit, you probably saw the sign-in sheet, but if you haven't, you got to sign the sheet and get the event number over at the registration table. So let me share just a few final thoughts here, and then we'll get to the reception. We live in challenging times, stating the obvious, aren't I? Our country and our world are deeply, deeply divided on too many fronts right now. No matter how you feel about last week's election results, we as a nation must find a way to come together. And I think one way we can do that in this country is to find causes that you can support, no matter what your philosophy or no matter what your politics. And if you look at the VDP mission, I think that's one such worthy cause. You've heard it before, but restoring invisibly injured veterans involved in the criminal justice system to the communities they serve to protect. If you feel, from what you've heard tonight, and I don't know how much more we could have done or said about supporting the VDP, about getting involved, we urge you to contact us. General Clybourne set the stage, and others with the mentor panel made it clear that there is just a real need for veterans to step forward and be willing to volunteer their time to help fellow veterans who really don't have the ability to go and just talk to a lawyer or a probation officer about what they're experiencing in the same way they can talk to a veteran. One of our goals, and some say it's too difficult, is to not just provide mentors for every veteran treatment court here in Minnesota, but to create a group of veterans who will be willing to serve online as virtual mentors, no matter where in the country they're located, where with the proper training and coordination and the types of things that Paul talked about doing, we will do it right. We will have a list that veterans in crisis, particularly veterans who are no longer in the court system, so they don't have a probation officer that they can talk to. They might not even have contact with the mentor that got them to the veteran treatment court. They'll have a list of people that they can reach out to for virtual help. I think it's doable with the proper financial support, the proper recruitment, to be able to do something like that, starting in Minnesota and then bringing it elsewhere. We have people in outstate Minnesota who don't have a veteran treatment court around the corner like you do in the metro area. We could start here, get virtual mentors from companies, from organizations, from law firms, from wherever veterans are willing to sign up to help other veterans. I think it's doable. For anybody who doesn't see themselves as a mentor, but wants to get involved somehow, we're starting to really grow. We're starting to get a national reputation and a national footprint. We can use people from all walks of life. Contact us on the website, and we will be in touch. Let me close with a little bit of history. The Veterans Department of Veterans Affairs, I never get it right, now you know it as the VA or the Veterans Administration, in 1959 decided to adopt a motto that they were going to put on their building in Washington, D.C. And they looked at President Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, just a brief phrase from what he said to the country not long before he was assassinated. And the phrase was, "To care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan." And that stayed on the building for many, many years until recently the VA decided to update its motto. And it now reads, "To fulfill President Lincoln's promise to care for those who have served in our nation's military and for their families, caregivers, and survivors." I think this motto should be much more than just the VA's motto. As a final thought, in these uncertain times, I think it's good to remember the entire concluding paragraph of Lincoln's second inaugural address. He was facing deep division in this country after years of civil war, and he sought reconciliation and recovery for a very divided nation. He famously said, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Thank you to all who are here in person. Thank you to those who have joined us online for this very special Veterans event. Good evening, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.